Welcome to Mission Snapshots from Mission Projects International. Today we're going to share a few brief experiences from our recent mission trip to the Democratic Republic of Congo. Mike Ballard and I were very excited to see how the Lord is blessing His work in this very poor and needy Central African country. But in particular, we would like to share the experiences of two dedicated, self-sacrificing workers for the Lord in this area of the Lord's vineyard. The first is Hezekiah, or as we would say in English, Hezekiah, and the second is Jedu, or Judah. And there he is, getting ready for the day's hike with the sleeping mat and briefcase. The major part of our recent trip was spent in the pie section. But let me tell you, it was quite an adventure getting there. We spent the Sabbath in Makoso, and then we headed south towards Pai. We knew that it would be impossible to arrive there in one day, but we were going to do the best we could. So Sunday morning we started walking. Now we were very thankful that not too long after we started walking, a large truck came by that was relatively empty. When they saw foreigners walking down this sandy road, they slowed down and asked what we were doing, and then they allowed us to climb aboard. Although at times it seemed as if we needed to hold on for dear life, we were very glad that this truck saved us hours of walking. Even with our unexpected ride, we were not even close to making it to our destination. But once again, we were thankful for African hospitality. Here we were in a village we had never been in, and none of our team knew anyone. But within minutes, we were ushered over to a home, chairs were brought out, and we had a base camp for the evening. Early the next morning, we were preparing to make the trek, which would hopefully take us to the villages of the Pai area. We put on our backpacks, or hoisted the loads over our heads, depending on what our preference was, and we were off. As the day began, we walked across grasslands, down the steep slopes, to the more verdant jungle areas along the creeks and rivers, and then ascended again quickly. I don't think I've ever seen a switchback in this area of Congo. Fortunately for us, we came across some friendly villagers, and they've offered to provide food for our hungry group that had not eaten yet that day. And then began what they referred to as the Great Bush. Now we quickly learned that when they described something as great, that great indeed it is. We could not always count on the mileage or the hour estimates, but the great we could always count on. The Great Bush was a stretch of grassland that continued for what seemed indefinitely. There were no houses, trees, or anything. Just burned grasslands and sand. We were very thankful that we had filled up our water bottles before leaving the previous village. After hours of walking, we could finally see a cluster of trees, a telltale sign of a village. Glad that we were finally nearing the end of the Great Bush, but fearing to hope that it was our destination, we were greeted by the normal retinue of children and onlookers. As they led us to our temporary abode, to our great thankfulness, we discovered that we had finally arrived in Bumba, our destination after 11 or 12 hours of walking. In the morning, the village converged into the church for our meetings. As the singing began and as we looked at the church, we were happy to see that they had built a very nice bush church. This is usually a sign that the Bible worker is an industrious and a motivated worker. As the singing continued and the people began to gather, there was quite a crowd that developed. Inside the church was so packed that there was absolutely no room for anyone. In fact, it was so packed that the benches that they had arranged for people to sit on, which were simply bamboo and other logs and things like that, began to break. The eaves around the church and every available shady spot began to quickly fill up. As the meeting progressed, we shared a message to lead people to see their need of following the entire Bible, including the law and the Sabbath, and preparing for Jesus' second coming. At the end were the typical questions. How do we know what day the seventh day is? And on and on. Answers were given from the Bible, and the conviction seemed to rest upon the crowd as they considered what they were going to do. The rest of the day was spent in interviewing baptismal candidates and seeking to ascertain their commitment and level of understanding. The next morning it was a couple-of-mile hike down to the creek to build a dam so that the water would be deep enough to hold a baptism. As we gathered around and sang songs with the believers who had made the trek down to the baptismal site, how thankful we were that the Lord is using faithful men like Hezekiah and Jehu to take the gospel to these people who have nothing, but soon, if faithful, will have everything. As the individuals sealed their lives in commitment to the Lord in the watery grave of baptism, I thought how many, literally thousands of more, are preparing for just this step in this forgotten corner of Congo. After the baptism, it was time to trudge up the steep ascent again, and then prepare for a journey, this time not through the great bush, but through the great jungle, to yet another village like Bumba. As we walked through the great jungle, I kept thinking of Bumba, the people there, and how the work was started. Bumba did not have a permanent Bible worker or a church planter come to their village, yet they had a growing and faithful church. Why? Because of two faithful workers who had been traveling through the great bush and stopped at Bumba for a rest. While resting, they shared about God's true rest, and interest was pricked. Hezekiah and Jehu did not stop there, though. They kept walking, week after week, through this torturous, seemingly never-ending grasslands to minister to these thirsty souls. They had their own villages to minister to. There are many other villages closer, but they saw lost souls searching for truth. One week Hezekiah comes, at other times Jehu comes, but both keep denying themselves of ease and comfort to minister to these needy souls, and fruit is being born from their self-sacrifice in a flourishing church and souls committing to the Lord through baptism. And this is the way that the work has spread from nothing to 50 churches in just a few short years. The brethren will stop in whatever village they are in to share the three angels' message. From this short contact, the request is put in for great instruction. Workers are then sent, and in short order a church is raised up, a memorial for present truth. But it's not just Hezekiah and Jehu. There are dozens of faithful workers who need our prayers and support. And if you would like to help them, we request that you would pray for Hezekiah and Jehu and other Bible workers there. And you can visit our website. It's at www.missionspro.org and click on the Donate tab at the top. Thank you for helping to keep faithful workers like Hezekiah and Jehu working for the Master. And may we soon gather together united as one rejoicing company upon the sea of glass.